back. Welcome to my channel. So the topic for today is the difference between micro and macro. What do we mean by the word micro? What do we mean by the word macro? See, micro हम लोगों ने +1 में पढ़ा है. So 11th क्लास में जो हमने माइक्रो पार्ट पढ़ा है वो इंडिविजुअल बिहेवियर का था, उसी को हम माइक्रो बोलते हैं. +2 में हम पढ़ेंगे मैक्रो. सो मैक्रो रिलेट्स टू द बिहेवियर ऑफ इकोनॉमी एज ए होल, राइट. सो इन दोनों का डिफरेंस अच्छी तरह क्लियर करने के लिए आई हैव मेड आउट 9 पॉइंट्स विच विल क्लियरिफाई ऑल योर डाउट्स. So we start with the basis. What is the meaning of micro? Micro means studying the behavior of an individual consumer or the firm. Now, what does the macro means? Macro means studying the behavior of the complete economy, studying the behavior of a complete country as a whole, studying the behavior of complete society as a whole. That is what we say macro concept. Secondly, what does it deal with? It deals with the individual economic variables in case of micro. It deals with the aggregate economic variables in case of macro. The business application, where can we apply it to? We apply it to operational or internal issues. This is true in case of micro. Where can we apply macro? Macro is applied to external or environmental issues. See, I want to add upon a point. Do we all know what is SWOT? SWOT. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. So what does macro tells us? Macro tells us about the opportunities and threats which are beyond your control, which are beyond the control of an individual firm or a group of firms, right? So individual firm means micro. The group of firms or the society as a whole or the globe as a whole, the world as a whole, aggregate, it means macro. So strengths and weaknesses is related to micro concept, and opportunities and threats is related to macro concept. The tools for micro is individual demand, individual supply. The tools for macro is aggregate demand, aggregate supply. What are the assumptions? In case of micro, we always assume that macroeconomic variables are constant. We never take the macroeconomic variables into consideration while we talk about micro. In case of macro, we certainly consider that microeconomic variables are constant. So microeconomic variables as in the relationship between price of a product and the demand, the relationship between price and supply. So microeconomic, right? Everything that we studied in micro, all those are part of microeconomic variables, right? We always assume in case of macro that microeconomic variables are constant. Concerned with, now you might have remembered microeconomics is always concerned with the pricing of a product, right? How a product could be priced, whether a person will buy a product at a particular price or not. So fixation of prices, perfect competition model, right? So this is product pricing. Theory of factor pricing, we all understand the factors of production. Factors of production, there are 4 factors of production primarily. One is land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. Now what does a person owning a land receives? The person owning a land receives the rent. What does a labor receives? A salary. The capital, a person who has paid in the capital must receive some amount of interest. So in case we go by the definition, the term interest here means an amount which a person must receive because of his parting with the money. So he has paid in the capital, so that is why he has parted with the money. And entrepreneurship receives the profit. So it helps us in understanding the theories of factor pricing. It also helps us in understanding the theories of economic welfare. Why is it important? Why is it important to one particular individual or one particular society or one particular firm, right? So this is all micro concepts. Coming back to macro concepts, theory of national income. Now macro, हम सब की इनकम जब ऐड होगी तभी हम नेशन की इनकम कैलकुलेट कर पाएंगे. सो इंडिविजुअल इनकम्स को ऐड करने के बाद वी मेक इट एज अ whole, right? So national income, aggregate consumption. Now I talked to you about the micro concept, whereby micro talks about the individual demand, individual pricing. Here we are talking about the aggregate consumption. What quantity shall I produce? Why shall I produce till that quantity? What should be the equilibrium, right? So this is what aggregate consumption tells. It tells the theory of general price level. What do we mean by the word general price level? General, overall price level kya rahega, right? Then it also tells us about the economic growth. It also tells us about the employment factors, the unemployment rate, why does employment happens, why is there an unemployment. It also tells us about the theory of inflation, theory of deflation, balance of payments position, the position of foreign exchange in the country. So these are all studied under macro concepts. Now in point number 7 we are going to talk about the scope. So the basis is scope. Now what does the scope tells about micro? Please understand, it covers the issues कौन से? The demand, the supply, the pricing of a product, the pricing of factors of production, the individual consumption, the economic welfare, right? So it talks about all the individual factors. Then we talk of macro. When we talk of macro, then it covers various issues. What are the issues that it covers? The national income. How can we increase the national income? Why? If there is huge national per capita income, still the income to a poorer person is lesser than the average income, right? How many number of poors are there? Why is there a structure, occupational structure so different? Why is inclination of income, nation's income to certain people? So it tells us about, it covers various issues of national income, general price levels. Why is there an inflation? Why is there a deflation if it is, right? It helps us in understanding the distribution of income. It also helps us in understanding the employment positions. Why are people voluntary unemployed? What do we mean by disguised unemployment? How much disguised people are unemployed, right? Or how much people are disguisedly unemployed. Then it also tells us about the factors of money. What includes money? The M1, the M2, M3, M4, all the concepts of money, right? So this is what macro covers. While going to the other difference, it is basis of their importance. What is the importance of micro? Micro primarily helps in determining the pricing of the product. What kind of pricing? It helps us in it helps us in clearing primarily the pricing of the product basis the factors of production, the land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship within an economy. So if the price of land increases, labor, entrepreneurship, or maybe capital increases, then we need to increase the price of a particular product, right? So it tells us about the importance of these factors. Then macro helps us in maintaining the stability in the general price level. It resolves the major problems of the economy. What all problems? Inflation. Please understand, deflation is also a problem. Reflation, unemployment, the level of poverty as a whole. So primarily macro helps us in understanding all the broader aspects of the economy. The last point of difference here is limitations. What are the limitations? Are there any limitations with micro? Yes. So what are those limitations? Micro is based on unrealistic assumptions. We always talk of full employment in the society. It is not possible at all. There are certainly few people who are voluntary unemployed. There are few people who are disguisedly unemployed. We may assume them employed, but they are not. There may be structural unemployed people, right? So there are people who are unemployed or who remain unemployed. So unrealistic assumptions. What is the limitation of macro? Please understand, macro can be called as fallacy of composition. What does this mean? It means that it does not provide the true picture or the right picture for an economy. I give you an example. Please understand this point. I say, or we say, our economy is growing. It has grown from 3 trillion to 4 trillion to 5 trillion, 10 trillion. Tomorrow it will be 15 trillion, 20 trillion, right? Or maybe more, right? So can we still assume that all our people are increasing their per capita incomes? It might not be possible. If our country starts producing Lamborghini and start selling it. If our country starts producing Rolls Royce, our country starts producing all the costly products that are available in the world, will that give the welfare to the lowermost or the poorermost person in the society? It might not. So that is why we say macro concept is fallacy of composition. उस जीडीपी में कंपोज क्या करता है? क्या सिर्फ रोटी कपड़ा मकान और बेसिक नेसेसिटीज कंपोज करती हैं? नो, इट इंक्लूड्स कार्स, कॉस्टली मोबाइल फोन्स, costly motorbikes, maybe yachts, and such other things which might be the people who are rich in the society requires and may not give any welfare to the general public. So these are the points of difference which might have cleared the micro and macro concept. Broadly we may say, and I once again may reiterate that micro means the individual factors, the macro means global factors. Thank you.